I hear a lot about software and the challenges that come along with software, integrations, cost, usability, all that fun stuff. I actually have a client right now who wants to implement a new software, but it's cost prohibitive for him at the start of the year and with all the crazy stuff going on with the economy. Today, we're going to talk about a concept I've never heard of before, and it's called no-code software. Welcome to the KeyHire Small Business Podcast, where we cover the issues that help owners scale their small business. I'm Corey Harlock, creator of KeyHire, and I'll be your host. Our guest today is Xan Hong. He is a consultant and owner of Drive Phase Consulting, where they transform ideas into reality with no-code solutions. A couple interesting things about Xan. He's helped his clients save over $1 million in app development. He first learned no code because his daughter over the pandemic wanted to go to the ice cream truck and get some ice cream. She kept missing it. So he built an app to track the ice cream truck, which I think is good dad stuff and also pretty cool. And former athlete. He used to be a sprinter at University of Pennsylvania, and he's a good golfer, 16 handicap. Matt, let's bring in Xan. Hey, man, how you doing?
Good. How you doing, Corey? Thanks for having me.
Hey, no worries. 16 handicaps. So that means you shoot in the 85 to 90?
Yeah, I would say like low 80s to high 80s in that range.
God, I hate guys like you.
I play with a lot of guys that are crushing me. So I hear you.
I know. I think the best round I ever shot was a 91 or a 92, and then I blew my elbow out, and then I had kids, and they got old and into sports, and no time for golf.
I hear you.
It's tough. So you're sitting in Delaware, you said?
That's correct. Yep.
How's the weather up there? Cold?
It was 60 for a hot minute, and we're back down to 30s. So a little bit all over the place. So hard to dress for, but not bad.
Yeah, 77 and sunny here in South Texas.
You're such a jerk.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, man. Sorry about that. So the format of this podcast, this is such a cool concept. And I remember when we first connected on this, I was. It was really interesting because I'd never heard of it myself, and I'm sure there are people out there who have. But this concept of no code software development. Mm-hmm. So we always like to start with a definition. What is no code solutions or software development? App development?
Yeah, great question. So I refer to it, and by the way, you're not the only one that hasn't heard of it. I'm always shocked because I'm in the world, so I expect everyone to realize it, know what it is, and there's so many that
it sounds like such a cool, simple thing, right? Like, why don't we all know about this?
Yeah, no. So basically, the way to think about it is it's visual programming. So it first started with websites, and I heard you kind of talking with Matt earlier. So that drag and drop concept for websites, right?
Right.
With WordPress and Wix and things like that, where you could drag elements on, kind of what you see is what you get. But no code app development is taking that a step further, where you're actually using kind of pre-built workflows to build the engine behind that front end, right? And so you can now kind of create workflows to automate processes in the back end. And so I tell people all the time, if you look at a basic business application, they're all kind of doing the same thing in a nutshell. I mean, there's certainly ones that are more complicated, but in a nutshell, you're creating data, you're reading data, you're updating data, you're doing calculations, you're displaying data kind of in a unique way. And so you can take these pre-built elements and build pretty complex apps without writing a line of code. And really, again, the most important thing to take away from it is that in general, we can build an app probably 5 to 10 times faster than traditional code. Now, AI code is a little bit different, but 5 to 10 times faster than traditional code, which adds up to, most of your cost in an app development is developer time, right? So that directly correlates to cost savings.
Okay, so I have two questions around this. Okay. Number one, is AI a part of this no code development? Are they interlinked or are they separate?
They are separate but merging, right? So AI code, generated code. So generated code is you put prompts in and AI actually generates code to write an app.
Okay.
No code, the interface is not a prompt, but you're actually using visual drag and drop elements to build the workflows, build the elements, build the app, right? Now, what you're seeing is a lot of no code apps are incorporating AI. So now you've really got kind of the merging of two really disruptive technologies where now we can build apps even better. Now, what I will tell people is, at the end of the day, AI generated code still generates code. So if you're a non-technical person, if you don't know code, it then becomes very difficult for you to maintain that app. Versus if it's built in no code, a non-technical person can learn that platform and then maintain that. So I really like the combination of AI and no code because you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get the speed, but then you also have a non-technical person that can still kind of maintain and iterate on that app.
That's cool. So I guess if you build it through AI and it's actually giving you code and you get a glitch, you need to have some savvy to be able to go in there and figure that out. Where with no code, it's limited, or you pull that out and drag a new one in and it should self-correct.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a little bit easier for those that are non-technical. So generally speaking, if you have a coding background, you probably love AI code. If you don't have a coding background, kind of the no code still is a benefit. And with a lot of the platforms, they're incorporating AI into their platform. So you're really getting the best of both worlds in a lot of cases.
Okay, now you're really going to learn how non-techie I am. So you refer to it as an app. And I know in our previous conversation, we talked about building software.
Mm-hmm.
Are they the same thing? Is this an app that holds a software that sits on your computer, or how? And just so if people are wondering, like, I don't need an app for my business, but I need a CRM, or I need a way to track my logistics or something. Are we talking about two different things? Can it do both of those? I just kind of trying to understand the.
Yeah. So when I say app, I'm referring to an application. I think to your point, I think when I say app, a lot of people not coming from a technical background associate that with a mobile app. So
like the thing on my phone, right?
Yeah. Exactly. When I say an app, I'm referring to either a web application that could be like a SaaS type product that you log into on the internet,
like a cloud-based solution. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And or it could be a mobile app as well. And with a lot of no-code platforms, you're building it the same way. Like, this is changing. There's some platforms where we don't have to do this, but to build a mobile app in a lot of no-code platforms, we're building a web-first, web-based application. What we do is then we put a wrapper around it that allows us to submit it to the app stores. And so it gives the feel of a native mobile app, but we're literally building a web app that we're putting a wrapper around it. Yeah.
So if I were to build a no code, I'll just use CRM for easy kind of thing, easy example. And I got you to build that. You would build a cloud-based solution. That would be my CRM. That would be the application. Then I would get on my computer, I would sign into it, and it would be hosted in one of the many server farms all over the country. And it wouldn't be hard data on my computer.
It would be most likely cloud-based, correct? Yeah.
Got it. Okay. I'm glad we clarified that, because I'm like, app software, but okay.
Yeah. No, you're not the only person. I have to kind of watch myself.
Okay. So, I mean, the tagline was, you get custom software for 10% of the cost. And you said it's, 10% of the time to build, to use code to build software versus no code. So that's kind of now maybe, like I said, I have a client out there who's talking about doing a conversion to one of these big players out there he's got a warehouse and logistics business. And he's like, man, I'd love to do it, but it's just so freaking expensive. So what are some of the mistakes? And I guess we can frame this in a few ways, because there are a lot of big players out there that own certain spaces, right? Like Salesforce or ADP, right? These guys own these spaces, and maybe it doesn't make sense to build custom software to do what they do because they do it really well. So what are the mistakes around building custom software applications for your business? Do people miscast them? Do they think of it incorrectly? Or are there any, maybe I'm going down the wrong road, Sam, but tell me, what mistakes have you seen business owners make when they come to you and say, okay, we want to either A, I can't afford to do software, or B, here's what we want to do with our software. And you're like, let's rethink that.
So first off, I'll tell you this is when clients come to us, believe it or not, the first thing I'll do is, hey, let's just make sure there's not an existing solution that meets your needs, right? Because as much as I would like to generate income, I always try to do the best for the client, and existing solutions are always going to be more cost effective. That being said, where if there is an existing solution, what I also tell people is you don't want to change your processes to meet the tool. You want your tool to kind of match your processes, right? And so what typically happens is if there is an existing tool, they'll come to them like, well, it just doesn't fit what we're doing. And so that's where custom software kind of does make sense, right? So then kind of, going down the path of where you're going as far as, okay, what are the common mistakes I see is the first one we see is the first, there's a term we use in software development, MVP, which is minimal viable product, right? And so that's kind of what we define that as, is the minimal amount of features that you can do to accomplish your goal. And in developing software, one of the biggest mistakes I see is in that first version, trying to do too much with it, right? Because inevitably, whether it's no code or code, your first version is going to have bugs in it. You're going to have, there's just too many things you're trying to do and so when you try and do too many things with that first version, I feel like it's almost trying to fight too many battles on too many sides, right? And so we try and prioritize, like, what's the most important thing you're trying to do first? Let's build that version, nail that, and then incrementally add the other features that you want once we nail that. Where we've seen the best results is when we've done that. Where we've seen kind of clusters is when we've tried to build just this Cadillac right off the bat. And it's just we're trying to debug all those things, and everyone gets frustrated. Users get frustrated. Clients get frustrated. And so we've learned to really try and simplify. So a lot of times when I meet with clients and they're like, hey, I want this, I want this, I want this, I try and back them down. Be like, hey, let's start with this, get that nailed down, and then adding on, incrementally once we built that initial product becomes a lot easier than trying to build all the pieces at once. Does that make sense?
So I'm a visual thinker. So let me tell you what I was thinking while you were talking. It's like doing a reno and you have a $200,000 budget. And while they're in there, they're like, well, we found this and we found that. And you're like, yeah, fix that. And then your budget, you end up spending $400K, right? So they try to kind of, once you get in there and you're working, the brain trust starts having, well, what if we got to do this and got it to do this? And then they overcomplicate the original one. And then I guess what I heard you say was build it like, you build your business. You do your main software and then add bolt-ons, right? You're going to go out and now the next module we want to add to this, let's have it do this. So you're kind of playing in it and then thinking, okay, well, the next logical, now that we're in it, because I have a feeling a lot of people have all these great ideas. And then when it's built, it doesn't flow, or the things they need aren't there when they need them. So if you start with a basic version and you're like, you know what, if we had this come in at this part of the process, that would be really helpful. So then we build that module and bolt it on.
No, 1,000%. And as you're talking through that, I'll actually mention kind of one of the other mistakes that we see, and candidly we learned ourselves, was we have learned over the years, and it's exactly for one of the reasons that you just mentioned, is we used to kind of jump right into building the app. What we've learned is we always now, especially if it's a bigger app, sometimes if it's a small app, we can get away with not doing it, but it's rare, is we'll start with what we call wireframes first. So if you're not familiar with wireframes, it's basically kind of all the major screens in your app. We graphically design them first. And usually the tool that we use is Figma. So we'll design them through, sometimes we'll do what's called a clickable prototype, where it's almost like, you can click to the next screen and it actually, you can kind of experience what that experience would be. But what we've seen is when we don't do that, there's a lot of people just like you that are visual. And so they come and say, here's what I want. And then we start designing it and they're like, oh, well, no, we actually really want this. Right. And so we just screw ourselves and screw them, because, even though it's no code, it's much more flexible. It still is adding cost if we're changing directions multiple times throughout the project.
Of course.
And that's another big one that we've learned.
Yeah. And that wireframe's like a 2D version of what they're going to get, right? It's like not the living, breathing version. It's just the 2D version.
But doing that process we've seen over and over again, it forces the client to make decisions that they hadn't thought of. Right?
Yeah, I think it's the way to go. I mean, even in my business, my assistant and the designer we use, I'll give them an idea and they'll say, well, how do you want it to look? I'm like, I don't know. I need you to come up with the concept and then I'll be able to pull it apart and kind of move things around. But if you're asking me, I can see it in my brain, but if you tell me to explain it to you or write it down on a piece of paper, it's gone, So, and you're better at this stuff than I am. So you start and then I'll jump in and kind of collaborate.
Exactly. So that's kind of another big lesson that we've learned over the years.
So what are maybe is there any other mistakes that we're missing? I mean, is there a wrong application for software where people want to try to automate things that just generally you can't? Or I remember years ago, I wanted to do software and a friend of mine who's also a business consultant, he said, the worst investment you can make for your business is developing software. I was like,
yeah. So what I will say, and I guess it's really more of a startup type of concept than anything, is like people that come to us and they have this idea for the next $1 billion startup, right? And they come to us and they want to just, they're usually the ones that want to design the Cadillac. Right. And again, what I'll tell them is you want to validate that what you're building is tackling a problem that's big enough that someone will pay for a solution. And I tell people, you don't validate that by asking, will you pay for this? You validate by making them pay something, whether it's like kind of early access or kind of, sometimes I even tell people like start it as a consulting service and kind of learn the problem by dealing with the customers, understanding what their true pain points are. And then what I've even seen and what we've done in ourselves in a startup that I was in is in that consulting service, we built an internal tool where we learn, like we use the internal tool to deliver that service more efficiently. And then we transition that into like an external SaaS type solution, and we were kind of our own first beta tester. So it's a little bit of a different mistake, but one that we have seen a lot. And again, I tell people if I don't think they've truly validated it, I'll tell them to go validate it before we go and build something. Because again, I mean, as much as we like to generate revenue, I don't like to generate revenue when someone walks away kind of frustrated.
Sure.
With the result, and so I want to make sure they're building something that is going to be successful for them as much as possible.
I can't imagine you get very many people that come to you and thinking they have the next $1 billion startup idea.
No, we do. and more importantly, they usually want us to work for free in exchange.
And they'll give you
a percentage of that $1 billion idea. Yeah.
VC alive and well, let me. You can get it on the ground floor, son.
Exactly.
Cool. All right. Well, let's move into maybe some pieces of advice. And one thing I do want to talk about, I don't want to not talk about, is the cost aspect of this, because
sure.
You said it takes about 10% of the time of regular coding.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe walk us through. Well, let's bunch it all together. So what pieces of advice would you give someone? And we've touched on some of that stuff already, and then maybe when we're done that, we can talk about the process, what it looks like, and how you save the time and where you save the time.
Sure. So where do you want me to start? Sorry.
Let's start with advice. The top 3 to 5 pieces of advice. If someone's listening is thinking, man, I've had this problem and I've been thinking about getting some software made, and this sounds like the right idea for me. What should they be doing to get this?
Yeah. So I would say the more they come to us, or whether it's us or if you want to build it yourself, what I would say is the more you can define what we call the user journey. So one of the most important things we can do before we get started is define what type of users are going to use the app, right? Is there going to be a consumer? Is it going to be a salesperson? In one case we're working on right now is an estimator. Is there going to be an admin user? So number one, you want to define, what types of users are going to use it? And then as much as possible, kind of storyboard out what do you want each of those user types to do from the time they log in to the time they log out, right? Okay. And we can typically help a client through that, but the more that someone can come to us with that information kind of fleshed out as much as possible, then I think the smoother the process will be. So I think that's a really important one. Because, and then then it comes down to thinking through, okay, do I want this to be a web-based app or do I want a mobile app, right? Or, will this be used primarily? And this is a different decision because you could have a web-based app that's primarily on mobile. It doesn't necessarily need to be a mobile app. So is this going to be primarily used on mobile, tablet, or desktop, right? Because those things will affect maybe what no-code platform we use, right? So the more you can kind of figure out those things out, it just makes our job a little bit easier. It allows us to kind of guide you down the right, path a little bit better.
Very
so the
cool.
more you think those through, the better it will be.
So I never want to kind of bury the lead, and I always try to think about what questions people would have out there. And I just realized we haven't really outlined what you could use this for.
Okay.
So as a business owner, what are some of the applications I could have you build something for me to do, or what are you seeing commonly, or what efficiencies are you able to build into businesses with this?
Yeah, so it's run the gamut. So I'll try and kind of group them into themes as much as possible.
Yeah, sorry, I kind of surprised you.
Yeah, no, you're good. So one is kind of you mentioned it, like a CRM type of app but more so the CRM, it's the automation workflows behind it, right? So a lot of business applications are some sort of variation of a CRM. And for those that aren't, so customer relationship management system, where you're storing all your customer lead information and you're kind of driving workflows and automations off of that, right? So we have one right now we're working on where I can't give all the details, but it's basically a CRM tool combined with an estimation tool in the construction industry.
Cool. All right.
So they're combining it into one where they can create the lead and then assign the estimation process. That estimator can go. Then there's a mobile app component where they can kind of do what they need to take the measurements to do.
That sounds like a chunky piece of software. Like that's pretty.
Yeah, it is a chunky piece of software, and that's one where it's almost kind of hard. I know I'm going to break one of the first pieces of advice I gave, but it's almost kind of hard to break. So we are starting as simple as possible, but the estimation piece is the chunkier piece of that. But we do have a simple CRM to begin with. So that's kind of one example of one. So another one is kind of a customer facing piece. There's some e-commerce brands where we kind of simplified the buying process through a custom mobile app, right? And so that's been another one that we've done. I'm trying to think of some other ones. Obviously, AI has been a big one recently. I just built one for myself, so I was actually trying to learn a new no-code platform, and in my head, if I'm going to take the time to do that, I'm going to build something that could be useful. So I built a social listening app that I use for my own lead generation. So basically, I put in keywords, and I have different integrations that I've done where, based on the keywords I put into my system, it'll go and get mentions on right now Twitter, Reddit, and LinkedIn that have those keywords in it. It pulls it into a dashboard, and then I kind of filter through it. I have AI kind of evaluate, is this kind of a high intent for my business or not? And then I actually have an AI component that will respond to that post. And it's been actually a pretty valuable tool for me to go and generate leads, because basically we're targeting people on social media that are looking for the services that we provide. So that took up a lot of integrations that we had to set up. But that's just another example of something that we were able to build.
So let me get this straight. You built an app that will go on social media platforms and find people talking about, I need to build a website, or I'm looking to build an app. Does anyone have any ideas? Mm-hmm. It'll prioritize those in terms of it'll score them, lead score them for you.
Yeah.
And then it will generate a response from you saying, hey, we can help you with that.
Yeah, basically, yes. Yeah. So, and just to give you a sense, I built that in less than a month.
Like that, you know how many people spend hours a day scrolling through and commenting?
Yeah. So it takes me now. It takes me about like 30 minutes in the morning. I'm able to get through 10 keywords that way. So yeah. So that's just kind of another. That's, like I said, that's something I just finished on myself. So it just made me think of that. But really, I'm just trying to give kind of a broad range of the types of things.
Yeah, that's wild though.
Yeah.
That's super cool that you.
Yeah, it's really, and like I said, the food truck tracking app was another one where we were able to. That actually got licensed by a food truck association, which was my 8-year-old daughter's idea. But basically, food trucks could share their location. There was a consumer app to download, so then they could always see where those food trucks were. It sent them push notifications when they were within a certain radius of their current location. So again, no code. So there's very little we haven't been able to build so far. I'm sure we'll encounter it, but so far we haven't. There's been few that we haven't been able to build.
Very cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, that's crazy. So if San, if someone's listening to this and they're thinking, I want to learn more about this, or I've had this idea and I want to bounce it off San and see what he thinks. Oh no, hold on. Before we get to that, the cost savings. Let's talk about that. So obviously it's a quick and dirty process compared to typing code. Now AI is helping with the coding and things, but you claim it's 10% of the cost of traditional. So how does that work out for you?
Yeah, so I can give you kind of real life examples. So that number, our tagline is we've saved our clients over $1 million in app development costs. So for this full disclosure, those are in the cases where clients have come to us and given us their other estimates that they got prior to coming to us, right? So those are numbers that where that's coming from. So to give you a couple hard examples of this, and these are bigger apps. So hopefully I'll give you a couple different ranges of maybe smaller apps versus bigger apps. But we've had 2 to 3 in the last few months where they came to us where their existing estimates were in the neighborhood of 400 to 900,000, and it was going to take 12 months or more to build. For us, it was going to be in the neighborhood of 25 to 50,000, and we probably could build them in 2 to 3 months.
Wow.
So, and in the case of the one that was $500,000, it was a small company competing against bigger companies, right? So they were using this technology to kind of disrupt their industry. The reality is, I think you kind of mentioned a similar case with your friend, is that project doesn't happen at $500,000, right? We ended up doing it for about 40K. And so that was a comfortable number for him. And so again, it really democratizes access to this custom technology. And again, we've got a few more that are in that 400 to 900,000 range, where again, we're in that 25 to 50K range.
I mean, for a small business owner, if they have this idea of getting software, no wonder they say like it's prohibitive, because $500,000 out of the genes of a small business doing 10, 12, 15, $20 million a year.
Yeah.
Shit, that could be the entire year's revenue, right?
Exactly.
You got to wait for a year to get it. And so, 25, 30, 40K is a much more reasonable number. You get it faster.
Exactly. And we've done smaller apps. Candidly, we're moving away from these smaller apps because they end up being a lot of headache. For very little margin. But on the smaller end, we've done as small as 5K. But I would say probably right now our average is 15 to 25K. As a range, and they're pretty robust apps. It's not like you're getting something very simple. I mean, and what I will tell you is a lot of the functionality we are leveraging what's known as an API, or application program interface. So these are third-party solutions that do a very specific thing that we're able to integrate with, use that to do that complicated calculation or scrape that data or do things like that, pull that into our app. That kind of third-party API is doing the heavy lifting. We're leveraging that to kind of add that functionality to our app. And so that's really key. I think people think, oh, we got to program all of it. No, we're smart about it. We're leveraging people that have built these external products to do a lot of heavy lifting, and then we're kind of aggregating all that functionality into one. And so that really allows us to build these robust apps without having to kind of to take a year to do.
And it doesn't sound like you lose any functionality on them at all. They're just as good and as effective as the $500,000 coded software.
Correct. Yeah. The one thing I will say, just kind of for full disclosure, now I think the no-code tools are getting better at this, but we have seen some of the tools where as you scale up to more and more users, you do see a little bit of lagging in performance. Yeah. But a lot of times it's because you're on a shared server and they do have kind of dedicated instances where you could pay up for it. But that's one thing I do kind of share with people is, no code can, and like I said, there are some solutions that are, addressing this, but performance can be an issue with no code. But again, I tell people you've saved so much money that even at a later date, you did have to kind of add coded components to it. It's still worth it. But there's a lot of companies that are 3-4 years in and are fine with it. So I just say that to be transparent about it. But yeah, I mean that's one thing that we have seen in some cases. But generally speaking, no code can handle a lot of what they need to.
And I got to assume it's evolving because it was probably meant to be cost affordable for smaller operations, but now people are like, oh, this shit works. And now like bigger companies are doing it. So they kind of have to play catch up because it wasn't built for that kind of volume, right?
That's exactly right. And that's where you are starting to see like more enterprise level no code tools. So, but yeah, that's just kind of one thing I just tell people to just make them aware and we walk them through kind of how to address that. But
super cool. All right. So now, man, if people want to get in touch with you, we're going to put Matt to work here. How can they reach out if they want to learn more about what you do or talk about some software?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best thing is our website. Our website is drivephase.co. So it's drivephases.co. And the easiest thing to do is there's a link on, there's about 50 links on there to schedule a free consultation. And, that is what it is. I mean, we don't do a hard sell. We just basically walk through, okay, what are you trying to do? Can this be done in no code? And then, if they want to kind of move towards a more full-on estimate, then that typically takes another session where we start that scoping process, which can be pretty intense. But yeah, that's really the best way to do it. Like I said, we do these free consultations all the time.
And we had some other places to reach out. Matt, what do you got? Your YouTube station, YouTube at Drive Phase CO, Instagram.
They're all pretty much the same handles. So.
Facebook, yeah, it's consistent throughout. Yeah, and there you go. There you are on LinkedIn. Cool. Hey, man, thanks so much. This has been super cool. I learned a ton from it, and I appreciate you taking the time to come and chat with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Corey. It was a pleasure.
All right, we'll talk soon. There you go. Xan Hong. That was a very cool and interesting conversation. I'd like to thank you for tuning into the KeyHire Small Business Podcast. If you got value out of the episode today and you want to keep up to date on our new content, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave a comment, even let us know if there's topics you'd like us to discuss on the show for you. If you prefer to listen to your podcast, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite platform by searching the KeyHire Small Business Podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm Corey Harlock, and until next time, stop grinding, start growing.